We're all set here, looks like. Mona, you're all set up?
Yes, we are.
All right, good.
Maybe everybody stays home because you're going to stay home and watch.
I'm sure. That's why traffic is such a breeze getting over here.
But they read a lot. I think what it was, not a lot of kids would watch, and a lot of more. So we had 4 kids that for 2,000 minutes.
Yeah.
We never had that before.
Ooh.
Like 77 in here. Would you like the fans one?
Fine.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Just tomorrow it's going to be like 47.
Yeah. Yeah, I ran up the rollers today and I bought a shovel.
Yeah, I'm trying to wait. I keep going to Home Depot to buy that driveway ice, that calcium product.
Yeah.
It's not out yet. They say-
Rollers had some products on already.
Yeah, they have rock salt out, but I don't want to use rock salt.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for the day of the calcium, because I used all of my last year. You couldn't buy it anymore at the end of the winter.
Right.
But for the most part, are you going to just keep it focused on the screen, on the PowerPoint?
Whatever you wish.
I think that's probably, I built it so you can broadcast that.
That's what I'll do then.
Is this live or being recorded? Which one are we doing?
This is live.
You have everything?
Yeah, I think so.
I was telling Ron, I'll send you a link.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, y'all, man. I'll see you tomorrow.
Put it somewhere. Wherever it's easily accessible.
Yes.
Yes, you too.
Just sit anywhere. Hi there, Sarah Murray. Hi, nice to meet you. Oh, okay, thank you.
Just gonna pull those front lights into the PowerPoint, show up better. Is that hurt? Is that part of the lights?
No, that's good. That's good.
Hello.
Greetings.
Greetings. How are you?
Good afternoon.
Yes, it is.
Probably on last second.
We get that in the mail too.
I love paper.
We could get you more if you'd like.
Well, I have lots.
You do.
I have all of my books from college.
Okay,
Because
right
I
there.
can't just.
You need to hold on.
I have binders and notebooks too. Some of them, just like I went through them recently. And
Now, how
these are
far-
masterpieces.
How far back did it go? Though? That's the question.
I have one notebook from freshman year from my international relations
Oh, is that
class. And I was
right?
like, this is just too
You just
good
have
to.
to keep it.
I mean, I had 109% in that class. I'm like, you can't.
Right.
That's gold.
It is.
And I mean, one day I'll just be like, that's
Pass that on.
magical. Well, I mean, it's totally outdated. I mean, the European Union was Soviet formed. And I'm like, do you know how many New York Times articles I had to read to get this? There's glitter on here. You can't see it, but there is. So,
That's awesome.
you know, just remind you that in some level you could think deeply
Absolutely.
and write profoundly on something.
Parents and
Right.
then
Yeah,
a lot of
you're
us
right.
either.
I don't know what a factor is, but somewhere in this book it will help me explain it to you.
Exactly.
Good.
I understand.
We're down, huh?
I
We're
understand.
done.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
How are you?
Good. Good.
Greetings,
Greetings, my
friend.
pretzel friend. How are
My
you?
little
How are you? Good to see you.
Hi.
Do I have the latest printed out?
How are you?
And you guys didn't change it?
Morning, how are you?
Good.
Hi. Ron Davis.
Lynette
Because
Parks.
it's a pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
You'll get this in the mail. Never hurts.
Okay.
Absolutely. Ron Davis. It's a pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I don't think we're gonna do that this year, are we? Have a nice meeting.
I know. Were you having lunch the other day?
I was. It was my mother's birthday.
Brian's best is in our house.
Which fest is that?
Any insight on the brain game?
Yeah, so, the latest update is, good question, where can we put this, Mr. Davis? Because he could be on the house,
That's fine.
let me see how many people.
I do
Yeah,
think
well,
that's those are expected classes. It's the brain code.
Yeah,
I heard about
Bobby
it.
just emailed me, so we've got, Foster's got 4, so
It's
they're
been
good,
like a
Cooper
one
has
where
nada.
I'm like, this year.
Hal has one, but I have,
Your shining moment. I'm like,
I reached out to the PTA presidents this morning.
Regular.
Here's the deal, so I, told them, you know, like here, we're good, Amy's too good because she knows we've been talking about it, so she, these guys are all set.
Yeah.
We have like 1,
I mean,
2,
for
3,
years, I've gone.
we have at least 3 full teams. High school, that's teachers, not students. And Sarah, she's already been talking. And they were just waiting. There'll be a high school team. So, Jody's on this meeting at JMS. But we know that the Super Mellon, the principal and the assistant principal are gonna participate. But now, so I'm gonna try to get the newsletter and stuff. They need to be. It's next Wednesday, yeah. So it's my first day back after a long day. And how tour, everybody's gonna be out, especially elementary. So we'll get there. But I've got, we have a presentation tomorrow. So we'll talk about it. Guys, anyway, so last year, take a look. We tried to get Ed Kuda, school board member, he's on that. And she's like, well, I might be able to get another one. So she was working on that.
As someone who would say,
I don't know what happened.
because I try to.
So at this point, you may be off the radar.
It's not team, but
No, yeah, it's really. We'll work it out.
Hi.
I'll do a paper.
Thank you. Hey, are you with me today?
No, and I just told you, I said, this is my schedule for, that's okay, what am I doing? Am I wrong? Next week, on every other week. Yeah, next week.
Yes.
No, I.
No, I don't. I honestly, like, I put out that list.
Right, yes. No, that's awesome.
I
Yeah, I read it again. I know. They're all, that's why you go back to okay, so that's what you said. Because they're two best friends.
Are we live? When you see me walking in front of
Yeah, I couldn't remember.
this one.
I used to deal with the priority. Markham said, then, got it. Cool. It's been a good meeting today.
What's that?
She did good meeting today.
Okay, so just from your.
It is. Yeah, the hard time in this.
She said, we talked about yesterday.
No worries. I kind of was like, sit a little till I got the like, make November 5th go away.
I should have asked this. Yeah, no, so they're just gonna get back and forth. Sometimes your screen. All right, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, live audience, for being here, and welcome to anybody who's watching us live via the web right now, or if you're watching this after the fact. Thanks for being a part of the afternoon. Rob Frio, principal here at Markham, and thanks for being here today. I know that this is a great discussion that we're about to have, and I don't want to take too much of my own time, but make sure I introduce the man of the hour, the important man, Dr. Ron Davis. Dr. Davis is the Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education in the district, and our goal today is pretty simple, is really just to explain the Markham's middle school transition process and be able to field some questions that you might have about that. And hopefully after our conversation today, you'll feel very comfortable with the district's policy and procedures for our middle school transition. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Frill. So last year when we did this presentation, it was more of a conversation. We didn't need a microphone or a screen. But since we are streaming live, we wanted people to be able to hear us and also see some of the information. We put together a little formal presentation, and we're using the microphone so that the recorder can pick us up. Again, so welcome. I know this is an important time for you and your children as you're transitioning out of middle school or out of elementary school and into middle school. How many of you already have middle school children? So we have
I hold the children.
wonderful, wonderful. And we have at least one in the room that has a middle school child. So hopefully this information will be pretty clear to you, and you can understand the why as to how we've gotten to this process, and then we'll talk through the process, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. And obviously, if you have questions that come up down the line, a week from now, a month from now, 3 months from now, in June, at any point, if there's questions that arise, feel free to reach out. Mr. Friel is very comfortable and familiar with this information, as am I, so I'm sure both of us can serve as resources for you. So let me jump into the PowerPoint quickly. It's only 4 slides, so it should only take us a few minutes to get through some of the details. There is a handout, and this handout will also get mailed to you. So any parent that has a 5th grader, we will be sending out a mailing to you as well, and this information will come to you via the mail. So let's jump into transitioning Markham students into our middle schools. So there is a board resolution that actually gives guidance on how we handle this process and this procedure. Historically, this board resolution was a result of a middle school study that occurred back in 1996, and then the proposal from parents and the community member came forward in 1997. So we're going back almost 18, 19 years in terms of the history of this process. And then it was reviewed. So let me, before I jump ahead. So in this resolution, what was important to the community that was presented in the board resolution was that there was not a line drawn through any elementary school in terms of dividing the elementary school and sending them to a particular middle school. Ultimately, what ends up happening is it leaves it up to parent choice and parent decision. So it was important to the community back in 1997 not to say that we're going to draw a line through any particular elementary school, and these particular streets go to one middle school, and a different set of streets go to another middle school. And you'll see as this moves forward, that's what happened in the guidelines. There was not a line drawn through a middle school. Also, what was important to the community in 1997 is to give consideration to the distance that students had to travel in order to get to their middle school. So when you look through that particular study, and I believe we have all this information on Markham's website, you're welcome to read through it all. You certainly can see the considerations, you can see the community members that served on this study that kind of led to how these guidelines evolved. So it was then passed in 1997. It was reviewed again in 2006. And I know we reviewed it again in the last couple of years. I believe it was 2012. So the feeder schools, the in-board resolution that go over to Jefferson Middle School, Hoover, Jefferson, Lincoln, and Markham. So that is the official elementary schools that go into Jefferson Middle School. And then when you look at Mellon, Foster, Howland, Washington feed into Mellon. So that is by board resolution which elementary schools are assigned to a particular middle school. So Markham to Mellon guidelines had to be established as a result of this resolution. And again, available on the Markham Elementary School's website is not only this information, but all of the information that I referenced through the course of the presentation. It's on the left-hand side, I think it says middle school information. If you click on that tab, a lot of this information is there for you to review. So the first thing it says is a resolution calls for guidelines to allow certain Markham area students to attend Mellon Middle School. So there was consideration that some students could be given the opportunity to go to Mellon, and that needed to be clarified. So the primary goal is to offer those Markham students who live the furthest from Jefferson Middle School an opportunity to elect Mellon Middle School. So it goes back to that consideration from the parent group that did the study about the distance that students have to travel to the middle school. And so one of the guideline expectations is to create some type of a parameter for those who live the furthest from Jefferson Middle School to be able to attend Mellon Middle School. And so what we have on the website is a document that shows your address and the distance from your address to Jefferson Middle School. It's in miles and it's in feet because sometimes we get parents that are living next to one another or families that live next to one another, and it boils down to who has more feet to travel than the other, when it's that closely contested. So the document is available. You can look your street up, you can look your home address up, and you can see the distance that your son or daughter would have to travel to Jefferson. In the guidelines, it talks about 30 spaces are reserved, giving priority to those students living the furthest walking distance from Jefferson, and those with siblings concurrently attending Jefferson Middle School. Mellon Middle School. So if you have a sibling that is currently in 6th or 7th grade at Mellon Middle School, we have already mailed a letter to you. There are only 3 in this 5th grade class, and we've already received your response back. So all 3 families have opted for Mellon. So we know that out of the 30, we have 27 spots remaining for families to opt into Mellon Middle School. So the sibling letter has already been distributed, and then after this presentation, we will send out the mailing to everybody else and asking them to declare their interest in whether they would like for their child to go to Jefferson Middle School, which is the feeder school, or if you'd like to be considered for Mellon. And again, so what ends up happening is when you give us your response back, If we have fewer than 27 responses affirmative for Mellon, everybody can go. So that's the easiest component, which is what happened this particular past school year. The class was small, and the number of students who opted to go to Mellon was fewer than 30. Everybody who made the request was able to attend. If the class is large, which this class is particularly large, and there are more than 27 families who would like to opt to send their child to Mellon Middle School, that's when we go back to reuse the distance chart. We will, everybody who indicated affirmatively that they would like for their child to go to Mellon, we will look at the addresses, and those who live the furthest will be given the priority. And then we will go down in the silent spots in that manner. So after the 30 spaces have been filled, using those procedures that I've just described, and any additional requests for transfer students who come from a home school outside of the Markham district. So let me talk about that for a minute. So the way the policy is written, it gives first priority to the residents of Markham Elementary Sending Zone. You may be a resident of, I'll pick my elementary school, Hoover, and then you may have your child come here to Markham in 5th grade. So if you're not a resident of the Markham Sending Zone, your children would go at the end of the list after anybody from the Markham Sending Zone gets first priority, if that makes sense. So it gets priority to families living in the Markham Zone. But we do have children that live in other elementary sending zones who come here to Markham. So we would take the list, anybody that is above 27 from Markham, we would create a waiting list. If there's anybody from an outside sending zone that would like to go to Mellon, that's supposed to go to Jefferson, they would be placed on the list after anybody from the Markham sending zone would like to go. And then typically, that waiting list, we just monitor. We check it usually at the end of the 3rd quarter, we check it at the end of the 4th quarter, because as families make decisions, whatever is the conversation inside your household, you may have changed your mind. And we've had that happen on occasion too, where a family says, yeah, I'd like to go to Mellon, but we've had a further conversation where this has come up, now we're opting to go to Jefferson. So it's a pretty fluid, not terribly fluid, but it is a fluid process. We can have some changes that occur throughout the course of this upcoming spring. So we don't typically we'll send out notification letters in January that you've been identified to go to Mellon. But after that January is when we create the waiting list. And then we check in at the end of the 3rd 9 weeks. We'll check in at the end of the 4th 9 weeks to see if there's been a change in plans for any family. And then whomever's on the waiting list, again, it's organized by furthest distance from Jefferson. They would get the first nod to move into that newly opened slot. We've also had some occasions in the past where families have explained to us some pretty extenuating personal circumstances or family circumstances, and we certainly try to take those into consideration when we're moving through this process. So we have, on occasion, gone above the 30, 31, 32, 33, but it's usually a pretty significant exception to make that move. So I put that note up here as well. It's pretty. There's some extenuating circumstances that have come up with families. We've tried to work with families and understand what's going on in their life and with their children. And if it's usually a medical condition or some significant life event, we have made an exception. So that's typically how we handle the 30 spots. Procedurally, as we talked about, it's based on where the student resides, not in which school the student attends. It goes back to my example. You may have a family that resides in the Hoover district, but they send their child here. So it's not based on where they reside. It's not based on where they attend. It's based on where they reside. Students who elect Mellon usually are expected to remain at Mellon for their middle school years. When you read in the policy, we have an expectation that where you start at a middle school, you tend to finish at that middle school. Again, it goes back to if there's some significant extenuating circumstance that requires a transfer from Mellon to Jefferson. If you engage us in conversation, we certainly would like to hear that out, and then we'll try to work with you accordingly. But typically, what we see happening is once you declare a particular middle school, in this Markham to Mellon process, you would stay at that middle school. So our timeline, as I talked about in September and October, we have sent out the sibling letters and we have gotten them back. So we know that the 3 siblings that are in Markham who have brothers and sisters over at Mellon are choosing to go there. By policy, we're to indicate to you in our letter the number of available spots that are left. So it's 27 that we're working from right now. After this presentation, we will send out the request letters. Everybody else will get a letter, and we will ask them to respond accordingly, whether their request is Jefferson or not. We will usually then, by the time we get them back, we're heading into the winter break time. So usually we say December or January, we will get the letters back out to you to notify you if your child has been identified for Mellon, if that is your request. If you send it back to us and say your request is Jefferson, obviously that is your sending zone, and that would be the school in which your child is assigned. So in a nutshell, I have ran through this piece of paper in that PowerPoint. Let me pause for questions.
I just wanted to make a clarification maybe.
Please.
Because last year I recall that there was a student that went to Markham but resided in the Washington Elementary School District, which was the Mellon theater. Does that student count towards the Markham numbers?
It does not. So again, well, it's the whole 30 number ultimately that we're looking at. So the way the policy is written is that if there is a student who lives outside of the Markham zone, Washington is an example. Well, if they live in Washington but they're going here, they naturally feed into
That's what I mean.
they naturally feed into Mellon anyhow. So they would not count against Markham at all.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you. I had to think through that as we were
No, I knew it
talking
happened
through.
last year, so there's another space.
Correct, that's correct. Yeah, so if any of the families that are currently in the 5th grade live in the Foster or the Howe or the Washington sending zone, they'll come off of the 5th grade totals already because their natural sending, their natural feeder is from that home school into that particular middle school. Please.
Can we get a tour before we make our decision?
Certainly.
Of both schools, how do we go about doing?
Yeah, so I would reach out to the principal, and I know they have move-up days, move-up days for students to come over. It's in the spring typically, but you're certainly welcome to contact the principal and then arrange to go over and have a conversation and then look around the facility. Generally speaking, both middle schools are quality middle schools. The same academic program, the same approach, teaming is the middle school approach. Where 5 core teachers work with the group of students that is assigned to them. It's typically around anywhere from 90 to 100 students that those 5 core teachers will work with. And so programmatically, it's a pretty similar experience. Where you start to see some differences is when kids get to start choosing their electives. It's student interest driven at that point. So you may have a group of students at one middle school that are particularly interested in problem solving, technology education course called problem solving. We offer it in both middle schools, but historically it has never run at Jefferson. It runs at Mellon. So it's just the kids at Jefferson are more interested in course, as their elective as opposed to problem solving. So really, when you start to see some of the differences that emerge from the 2 middle schools, it's usually as a result of student interests that are driving the course selection. Programmatically, when you look at the base educational program, everyone is receiving the same type of quality experience. Yes, ma'am.
What's the population of both schools, and then what's the teacher and student ratios?
So the population, I jotted those down.
Approximately.
Approximately. I didn't write them down. So typically, what we see. Currently in our middle schools, we have Jefferson has 583 students, and Mellon has 664 students. So what we typically see is right around or a little under 200 students coming into Jefferson, and a little over 200 students going into Mellon. With this particular 5th grade class, the way the 5-day numbers are going to play out, we're actually going to see a larger class going into Jefferson than we see going into Mellon. Even if all 30 students opt to go to Mellon, we're still going to see a larger number going into Jefferson because the other feeder schools have larger 5th grade classes. So that's usually how it works out. So although historically we have seen slightly larger numbers going into Mellon, even if all 30 opt to go into Mellon this year from Markham, we're still going to see a larger Jefferson number because of the other feeder schools. So that gives you, right in around the 200 per class ballpark. 6th grade class, 7th grade class, 8th grade class. So right in around the 200 number. And then you talked about the ratio. So like I said, they're built in teams of 5, so 5 core teachers. And then so the class of 200 that comes in, they're divided onto 2 teams. And then on each team, there's 5 teachers. So if the class of 200 comes in, 100 go onto this team, 100 go onto this team, and then they take the 5 core teachers and divide it in that manner. So you're simplistically speaking, it's like a 1-to-20 ratio. However, where it starts to fluctuate a little bit is, again, it goes back to student course selection. You might have, so in that math teacher, for example, who's going to teach 5 sections of math, there may be 3 advanced sections and 2 academic sections. And so the advanced sections may be a 1-to-22 ratio, and the academic sections may be a 1-to-18 ratio. So it really starts, when you start to get down to that level of detail, it's based on student scheduling. But generally speaking, when they come in and they're assigned to homeroom, they just take the team and divide it by the 5 teachers. And then the actual class experience usually fluctuates based on student scheduling requests. Does that make sense? Yes, ma'am.
So those request letters that you send to us coming up next.
Yep, I told my secretary as soon as I walk out of this presentation to print them. So they should be in the next couple of days.
And so what's the turnaround? You want those back sometime in December?
So yeah, usually, because we'll have typically right in between, we get 2 to 3 weeks of a window. So if we print today, and then I can get them all signed tomorrow, and they go out, so we'll kind of count this week as a wash. So October would be a wash. So we probably look at the first 2 or 3 weeks of November, usually maybe around the holiday break, or the Thanksgiving break. We would love to get them back, and then coming back from the break, we would look to process them back to you. So let me just give you, I did the comment that I made about the classes coming in. I jotted the numbers down just so you have some ideas. So with this 15-16 school year, should I have these right here? So if Mellon has, so theoretically, every Markham student could opt to go to Jefferson, because that is their feeder school. So everybody could opt to do that. If that happened, we would have 175 students feeding into Mellon, and we would have 252 students feeding into Jefferson.
Wait.
252.
So if everybody goes to Jefferson.
If everybody opted to go to Jefferson by policy, which they can, we would have 175 students feeding in. That's as of the 3rd day enrollment numbers. So that's as of a September number. So there may be some fluctuation. It's usually only a student or 2, but there could be some fluctuation. If we have 30 opt to go from Markham's 5th grade class over to Mellon, which I know we at least have 3, because we've got 2 grandmothers back. The number would be modified to, we'd have 205 students going into Mellon, and we'd have 222 students going into Jefferson. So like I commented before, even if everyone opted, all 30 that would opt to go into Mellon could go into Mellon. On this particular year, because of the size of the other feeder schools coming into those particular middle schools, this is a year where Jefferson is going to be bigger than Mellon anyhow. So it's a little different than what it's been in the past.
Is there any discussion about upping that 30 then even now?
There has not been. I mean, well, there isn't currently. There has been in the 2006 review, the 2012 review. So the number is set up there.
Not like an ad hoc for this year.
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the elementary schools that feed to Mellon, do they have the option to go to Jefferson, just like we're having the option to go to Mellon?
Yes, they can make that
So
request.
that number will change maybe too.
Typically, my experience is we maybe only get 1 or 2 families from all of the other sending zones that would like to go to Jefferson. So and typically, historically, we have approved them because Jefferson has been the smaller of the 2 enrollment classes. On this particular year, with Jefferson being the larger of the 2, we'd have to give real serious consideration to that approval because they already have larger numbers than Mellon. But it is a request that we've got.
I have another question, it's kind of one maybe Mr. Field could answer too, but it's a two-parter. Back to where you said the core classes for both of the middle schools, there'll be 5 teachers. And then it sounds to me like you'll have, let's just say, 18 and 18, or however you split it up, because there's 200 and some odd kids. So does that mean that same 5 teachers work with all of those 200 kids? They're just split by homeroom? And then they do.
So let me clarify a little bit.
Yeah.
So on each team at the middle school, there are 2 teams in each grade level. There's 2 6th grade teams, there's 2 7th grade teams, and there's 2 8th grade teams. On each team, there are 5 core teachers. So we're actually talking about 10 core teachers.
Okay.
And then you take the class of 2. So typically what happens is 100 of the students that are coming in, I'm using a round number.
Right.
100 of the students that come in are assigned to the Iron Brigade, as an example. And the other one is the Rockets. So the other 100 students is assigned to the Rockets. And then you take the 5 teachers that are on that team to service those students that were assigned to that team.
Okay, and then part B to this question is, will the children go visit on their own? Obviously, they'll just go to visit Jefferson. Oh. Sorry.
So that's actually a 3-phase transition process for the kids. Phase 1 is in January, and that's when the guidance counselors from both middle schools will come here. We'll do a presentation, kind of do course selection. We keep all the kids together in that assembly because it's still Markham, they're coming in, it's the same information. And then in May, after all of the decisions have been finalized, we have a move-up day. And I want to say it's like May 6th or May 7th, somewhere in there. And then the kids will go either to Mellon or Jefferson, depending on whatever their school that they've been assigned at that point.
Okay, so that if you requested Mellon, then your child would go to Mellon and move in.
Right, if you've requested it and if it's approved. I mean, if you're one of the 30 spots, then yes, you would go to Mellon on that day. Some of the tricky spots are for the kids with the waiting list. If they're on the waiting list and they haven't been approved, then they go to Jefferson naturally on that day in May. So I know over the last, sometimes I've run into that situation. It does get to be a little tricky for the kids. We really try hard though. While the kids are here in 5th grade, we are 5th grade at Markham. And we are excited to be 5th grade at Markham.
Right.
And like in May is when we have to really like naturally think, okay, middle school's right around the bend, so now we have to make those distinctions. But up until that point, we really try hard to keep it that we're all one group. And then that 3rd transition day is in August, and that's where you would actually go with your son or daughter to the middle school, wherever you are assigned.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Just the walking, the feet per miles, is that like via a sidewalk, is it via a crossing guard route, which would be significantly different? Would you explain where the numbers?
Sure. So there was a company, and now I'm drawing a blank on the company's name. It's on the site there. There was a company hired back in 1997, 1998, when they created what were proposed as safe walking routes in consultation with Mount Lebanon Police. And then they hired this company to follow that safe walking route. So if you go back and read the document, it talks about the establishment of safe walking routes, and then they hired this company to follow that safe walking route. So that's how they created the
Does
document.
that correlate to our crossing guard placement now being so much later?
Yeah, I can't say for 100%. What we've done in recent years is we've asked the Mount Lebanon Police to then take so we haven't had the study recommissioned.
Right.
So what we've asked the Mount Lebanon Police to do for us in recent years is actually take the old walking routes that we've had and actually put pin drops on them as to where the crossing guards are, understanding that there may be an occasion or two when crossing guards change from a particular location. So one of the previous conversations we had was, where are the crossing guards? How will my child know which is the route to go? So we have made that request of the police to provide us with that information. But the study that was used to create the distances historically has not been recommissioned since then. Yes, ma'am.
Kristen, I had a question about crossing guards, and Dr. Davis, you may know off the top of your head, but my understanding is each year there's the potential for crossing guards to be reassigned depending on traffic numbers and traffic considerations. They are police department employees.
Okay.
but I do think it would be valuable to have access to that information. Is that something that they make available where a parent could click and say, here are the crossing locations where the guards have been assigned, let's say for the 14-15 school year?
For the 14, I think that usually occurs in the summer. And we
So,
certainly
but I
can
mean,
look at
like, is
that.
there a place, like, so if I wanted to go and access information, one place where I could find out where all the crossing guards are positioned each day, is that available for a
I
parent
think the
each
answer is
year?
yes. We just got it
But is
recently.
it updated, because they
I
did
don't know if
make
it's
changes over
updated.
the summer, which I think they've then gone back to what they were before.
So
but-
we had asked to
It's on
get
the-
such a list, and I thought we had gotten it more
Yeah,
recently.
I just didn't know, I've never seen that.
Yeah, there is a link on our website to that, but I'm not sure, like you're saying, I'm not sure how updated that information is. It's certainly something we can look at
Correct, yeah.
and see.
Because that would be valuable
Right.
before the start of the school year, that information I think would be available, had to be before the first day, right?
Right.
Because they have to know where they go.
And
might be
let me
helpful
follow up, I'll follow up
for
and see if we can
parents,
update
yeah.
that for our site.
So the question for the audience, and I'm a bad host here. I should have been parroting the questions for our audience that is following us. But the question was, is there a list of where all the crossing guards are? And then if there's a change to that location, is that list refreshed and made available? So that's what we're trying to sort through. So point to self. Next time a question is asked, I'll repeat it for the group that's following us.
I just
Please.
was interested in your explaining the historic nature of how this came about. We find ourselves in this situation as an elementary school. It's unique to this elementary school. It might be helpful to just kind of understand how Markham came to this place of having this opportunity to select, I say, quote, between the two schools. That's something that maybe not everyone understands.
Sure. I think I'm not sure if you're with us at the beginning.
So maybe, did you already explain it?
Yeah, I talked a little bit
Okay.
about it, so
Oh, then
it started
don't
with,
repeat yourself.
yeah, well, just to refresh, so the question is, gives me a chance to practice. Is that, so what's the history behind how this came about? And I mentioned briefly, give me a chance to go back to our PowerPoint here. Right there. So there was a study done for Citizens Middle School Committee proposal in April of 2019.
But I guess Markham used to go to Malin. Yes, all the whole
That's,
school.
yeah, that history I'd have to,
Okay,
I'm not sure
so
that I know
at
that
some
history.
point, something happened to make that change. That's the lore, if you will.
That's
Or-
when they came out of it, they went to the high school, they were talking
Okay.
high school.
Yeah, they were talking about
So it's like-
And then they
Yeah, I
had
just-
to, I actually wasn't.
I
This
didn't know.
probably- residents probably understand.
Those children.
Like,
And
how did Markham get, my understanding is it's because Markham is the most centrally located school, and they had to figure out how to divide the population. But I don't know, is that true? Is that rumor?
I had never heard that, and I've never read that either, so I don't, again, so what I've read is this
That's all
document.
you know, okay,
Correct.
got it.
I've read the history through this study, and then saw how it has transformed from that point forward. Because when they were trying to create the middle schools, they had to then determine how they were going to handle the elementary schools. Prior to this study, I haven't seen any information that would explain. There's probably residents that probably know it better than.
yeah, at that time, I guess, kind of to appease, it was very hostile time. And to appease, I think, Markham parents, there was the bus system that was put on. PennDOT put on a special bus route, which is no longer. I've had a kid who was for a while.
Right.
So that is not okay.
When the PennDOT made its cuts,
Yeah.
or, the PAT bus made its cuts, that bus was really only serving kids going to Jefferson.
Yeah, and that helped the kids go to Jefferson. Now they have to walk and ride.
I'm sorry, I don't know that. I don't know the history prior to this
Right,
time.
I understand, I got it. Yes.
Kind of like why Martha? Yeah.
Yeah,
There are-
that's what I mean, I think that there's lots of ideas or speculation or historic, oral history that gets passed, I just didn't know if there was any.
Again, so let me kind of wrap up then. I don't see any other, welcome to stay and have conversations with you personally. But as I indicated, procedurally, we will be sending you letters here shortly, asking you to suggest what middle school you would like for your child to attend. Your natural feeder is Jefferson, so if you indicate that your interest is Jefferson, that is where it will be. But if you indicate the Box Melon, we will then follow the guidelines that talks about this furthest distance from Jefferson. We will look at your address on that document that's on Markham's site, and then we will use that document to track each response that we get indicating interest. Obviously, if there are fewer than 27 that want to go over to Mellon, everybody will be granted that opportunity. And then if you should change your mind in the spring, one way or the other, whether you've committed to Jefferson and now you're thinking maybe you want to go to Markham, you certainly can reach out and say, hey, where are we? How many slots have been filled? Or if it's the reverse, if you've been selected for Mellon, you say, hey, I want to go to Jefferson, please reach out and share that too, and we'll make the necessary adjustment. But as I had indicated, if we do end up with a wait list concept, we will monitor that list throughout the spring and contact those who are at the top of the list, which means they are the next furthest house from Jefferson, saying that we now know people are still interested. So we will certainly stay in touch with those families.
I have a question regarding that. So since we are a feeder to Jefferson and you choose Jefferson, then you decide, your family has a little kitchen table conversation, and you say, I think I maybe want to switch to Mellon, and it's, far into next year. And you've already got your 27 potentially spots filled. What if this family, they can say it's me, whatever, is one of the farthest distance from Jefferson? Do I jump the line and get one of those spots, or am I, because it's March, now am I on a wait list?
You would be on the wait list. So after we fill it with this 27, so we'll provide a timeline, say within the next 3 weeks, let us know your interest, 4 weeks, whatever.
So we do have a.
Yeah, so we can make some commitment to the other families. We have to give them some feedback. So we can make some commitment. Once we make that commitment, we then will have filled the 30 slots if we fill them all. If we don't fill them all, you can certainly call me in March and say, I've changed my mind. I'd say, hey, you're in. If you call me in March and say, we've changed our mind, I'll say, okay, this is where you go on the wait list. So we certainly would put you on there.
So let me understand, everyone needs to respond, or?
It's helpful for us, only because it's only helpful for us because I just want to be sure that we've accounted for every 5th grader, and that if there's a family out there who really wanted to go to Mellon, but they never sent their form back in, I don't want that student to be disappointed in the spring because they've never heard back from us. So it's helpful for me if I get a letter back from every family, just so we can account for every student. Even if the students go to Jefferson, then I know for sure that every student has been accounted for, and there are no surprises in the spring in terms of the communication process. So I do ask if everyone would send their letter back.
I guess I thought that you just had to, if you wanted to know, you just had a petition, and you didn't have to really state anything if you wanted to just.
If I recall correctly.
But that's okay, that's good to know.
I think it's just a checkbox at the bottom of the letter.
It's not as assumed that they're.
Yeah, if you do not send it back to me, if you do not send the letter back to me, it's just from Jefferson.
Yeah, okay, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yes. You guys have been wonderful. Thank you for this time this afternoon on this beautiful fall day. And again, if questions arise in the future, Mr. Friel or myself, feel free to reach out to either of us. We'll be happy to respond. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
This is